So if you're a marketer or you're a developer or someone just looking to improve your brand experience, this should be a useful webinar for you. There'll be a lot of opportunities at the end of the webinar for questions and answers, so you can feel free to send your questions via the chat, and I'll try my best to answer all of them within our limited time. So with that being said, let me go over with you some of the items that we're going to be covering today. On the next slide, basically, we're going to talk about, obviously, how to create a mood board. But I'm first going to talk about myself, my background, WebWorks Labs, the company that I work for. What is a mood board? Helping our clients understand the process, the difference between a physical and digital mood board, why you should create a mood board for your brand, what are the benefits of using a mood board, what are some of the elements that should be included, the words, adjectives, color scheme, typography, font, finding your voice and tone through photography and other elements used within the mood board. And then I'm going to do a really, really cool demonstration with you and show you steps on how we're actually going to be creating the mood board, a very simple one, but you're going to see me in action creating it. So let me share with you a bit about myself. Going into I would say about 10 years of experience in the digital media realm. I started with traditional web design, and then I went into e-business management, where I studied at UFT. I have an extensive background in internet marketing and brand development, having worked with brands such as KFC, Subway, Nissan, Suzuki, and the list goes on. Recently added to my skill set is UX UI design for WebWorks Labs. Just on a personal note, I love nature, tourism, fashion. I love to travel, but considering the situation now, it's limited. But fashion and music, technology basically sums up my passion and my continual desire to learn and grow. So a fun fact about myself is that I binge watch Borat videos, very quirky sense of humor. And I love magic shows. So I'm often on YouTube looking for magic, magicians, David Blaine, and these type of things. So let's get into about the company, WebWorks Labs. So we build a team that combines digital marketing expertise. We all have real deep design knowledge and SEO experience. We're really a diverse team. We provide full-scale service from brand strategy, web design and development, copywriting, social media management, and so on. Our diverse group is really part of our DNA in terms of what makes us unique. We come from different backgrounds culturally, as well as our skill sets. I think we're pretty fun to be around, and I think this really resonates with the clients that we have, because we tend to spend a lot of time with our clients while we're working together to achieve their business goals. So basically, WebWorks Labs, just an agency full of diversity and lots of support within the digital media and marketing and branding and so forth. So let's go into what is a mood board, because a lot of you may know what a mood board is, and a lot of you may not. So just to sum it up, a mood board is a collection of style, like color, texture, UI framework, or theme that visually unifies a set of images. Mood boards have been used across a wide range of design professions, like in the fashion industry and so forth. They've used that extensively, and more so in the physical mood board, which I'll talk about later on. So basically, it's a way of collecting and presenting ideas in order to enable the development of a particular project or briefing. So usually a mood board would come before you even launch or design your logo, or even setting up your social media assets and other things that go into your brand guide. But there are times when logos are developed. Oftentimes we do have clients that already come to us with a brand in mind. They already have their logo intact, and then we just build from that. But if you don't have a logo, we start from scratch and we start to draw the inspirations from different elements. We'll do that by making like a branded sort of mood board with the color scheme and so forth. One core piece of this is a crucial for the web design process, especially for the web design process, because web design is a constant work in progress. So we really pull everything together before we even start the development phase. So let's go into about helping our clients understand. We have to recognize, at WebWorks Lab, not all our clients will understand the process of a mood board exercise. Even marketers We may have marketers amongst us today, may not understand what a mood board exercise is. So our job is basically to create that. Prior to creating the mood board, we usually meet with our clients to discuss the project in length, and we get an idea to get that creative brief started. We will go through the exercise of trying to envision your target audience or your ideal customer. What do they need? What do they like, through our buyer persona exercise, which is another process that we do here. We do a buyer persona exercise, and we may do a webinar on that later on. But when defining the look and feel of the brand, it's important to think about what resonates with your target audience, not just what you're drawn to, but really what resonates with the end user. By now, we would have gone through the persona building exercise, and we would have determined your target audience. And so the mood board is most likely the time our clients get to see their ideas visualized without the actual structure and the end design process. We usually do that within 5 images or less. Less is more in this case. And then we would hand you a detailed design mood board. It also showcases the capabilities of our designers before we actually get into the actual design, core design. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the difference between the physical mood board and the digital, starting with the physical. As I mentioned before, mood boards originally were created with physical objects used a lot in the fashion industry, where they would take swatches of fabric and different pieces of textures and so forth and put it on this big board, physical board. So it could be anything from photography to magazine cuttings, even textures. As you see here, you have plants, things you could touch, feel, smell, little snippets of other inspirational objects. You can also look at it as a giant scrapbook, if you like. If you're a hands-on person, this format suits you best, which is the physical. Now, getting into the digital mood board, it's similar to that of the physical mood board, except that this is all done within a graphic program or some sort of graphic platform. So the digital mood board is a collection of style, like colors, textures, but it includes the UI framework oftentimes, or the theme that visually unifies a set of images. It's usually put together with a program such as Photoshop. That's the program I use to create it. But if you're not technically savvy in Photoshop, there are other programs for the lay person, very simple to use, like Canva, that you could use to actually create a mood board. Now I'm going to tell you, go into the segment where I explain to you why you should use a mood board for your brand and why it's very important. As I said, it's been used around a wide range of industries, but with our clients at WebWorks Labs, we use them very early in our design process. It's one of the first things we do because we need to get the sense of the client's needs and their taste, right? Because we don't want to come in with our own personal perceptions of what, our own personal taste. So we also want to incorporate what the client's needs are, and why we also explore some potential directions with them. Take, for example, if you are a marketer or client who specified that you want a luxury look and feel for your website project, including luxury stylized fonts, etc. Well, the word luxury in itself is an unqualifiable term. It means different things to different people. So a mood board, in essence, will showcase what we, the designers, believe to be luxury that may be different than what you believe to be luxury. And we can come to a common ground and understanding, bringing into play all our different perceptions and tastes. The next segment is what are some of the benefits of using using a mood board? Well, they're great to convey design and inspiration, which is obvious, but it also helps in creating unique designs. And that's important. So the mood board, that process in itself suggests that it is a custom experience, right? It's not from a templated solution, but it started, we start from scratch. And it also helps accelerate the whole mock-up process. The mock-up process comes after the mood board is done, and we put together the design framework. So it helps accelerate it because we don't have all that guesswork while we're actually doing the mock-up. The details of the mood board helps to push everyone to be more specific as well. It helps to sort of spur the idea and help the clients and the designer come to a conclusive decision based on the direction, right? And so, for example, if I get feedback, approval from our clients on colors, images, icon style, features, and I would never get that in the mock-up phase if I skip that first mood board exercise. It's helpful because I have a clear understanding of exactly what the client likes and doesn't like. And then I can completely focus on the layout and interactions in the mock-up. It's a fairly low investment tool as well. Doesn't cost a lot. It's quick. So that's always great. And overall, it makes the whole process fun and helps with the creativity. So now we're going to get into what are some elements that should be in your mood board. So we're going to talk about a little more of the technical part of it. And so we have things like word clouds and adjectives. And I'm going to explain each of these as we go along. Color scheme, typography, and font selection. You have UI elements such as overall layout, icons, and buttons and menus, pictures, interaction, ideas. It could be even animation in some cases. Examples of snippets of other projects. Could even be competitor stuff, that you're inspired by. Patterns, shapes, and graphics. Mood boards don't actually reveal the actual design, as I said, that happens on your site. But it does pull from inspiration and examples, and it establishes and sets the tone and feel of what's going to be designed, right? So that's basically what elements we bring into the mood board. Now, to talk about the different elements, let's talk about, for example, the word and adjectives that represent your brand. So we do that by doing a word cloud, which is a cool little thing. So adjectives usually describe how you want your brand to look and your ideal brand voice. Is it earthy, chic, quirky, authoritative, friendly, high-end, comfortable, relaxed? These are the type of things that we want to understand through this process of doing a word cloud. It'll also help us stay on track when we're selecting colors that associate with that particular word, because each word brings a certain mood, a certain tone, and evokes a certain emotion. And it also helps with the copy as well, the messaging within your website or project. It also helps to think about what your brand is not. So by identifying words that your brand is not, then you're better able to direct the design to the words that actually apply to your brand. You may want your brand to sound friendly, but not too colloquial or humorous, but not too silly, that type of thing. So we need to do the word crowd to identify the tone and your brand voice. Going into the color scheme now, which is the big, that's what everybody sees usually first, because colors instantly convey feeling, which is why it's super important that the colors you choose for your brand mesh with the feeling that you're going for. That's where all the word cloud making and thinking come into play. Some questions you may want to ask is, are there colors that keep showing up in the photos? Are your favorite colors included? Do you want to use your favorite colors in your brand? Just make sure that you're selecting inspiration and colors that make sense for your brand and not completely determined by your personal experiences. You always have to think about who the end target user is or audience. Most brands stick to about 1 to 2 main colors. Think Starbucks, for example. They use that signature green, or Coca-Cola uses that red and white combo. Occasionally, you'll see a brand with more signature hues like Google. But a good practice is to define your signature color and 2 or 3 supporting colors. Could be more. It's not written in stone, but you can be a little bit flexible, but try to minimize that as well. Once we've arrived at your color palette, we will then write down the hex code, and I'll talk to you about hex code later on. Then we come into typography and font selection. Just like colors, the fonts you choose also play a huge part in your overall brand. For example, Vogue keeps it super sophisticated with their serif font, which conveys a more elegant look and feel. Serif seems usually more traditional. A font for your header can be more stylized, a little bit bolder, thicker, and more playful, whereas a font for body copy, readability is key in this instance. So Imagine your entire website body was written in a super swirly font, like Coffee Break, for example. Your eyes would not be happy. So your body copy font doesn't need to be boring, but it does need to be easily readable, right? So always remember that. Also, when it comes to putting fonts together, remember that it's really about finding attractive opposites. If you have a thick header font, go skinny with your secondary font. Once you've determined your fabulous font combo, then we note each of the font names. So we'll remember that when it comes into play when we're designing the actual website. Okay, and now we're going to get into the finding the voice and tone with photography. When you choose a photo that aligns with your emotions and style, if your style is bright, bold, and youthful, your voice and tone can be loud and outgoing, right? So similar to steps before in finding the adjectives, very similar process that defines how you want people to perceive your mood, we can then start looking at photography as a means of inspiration. After we've collected all the mood elements, we can now set the mood by getting emotional response through photos, right? As they say, a picture says 1,000 words. These emotions are what the clients should feel. So as soon as they see these particular photos, they should feel a certain emotion when looking at your mood board. Emotions basically are triggered and align with what the audience inevitably is going to feel about the end product, right? So other elements we'll talk about in the mood board. We have things like interaction. And I will go through the different resources. I have at the end of the webinar, I have a resource, a list of websites that I use. But for interaction, I like to go on to Dribbble. That's where you search for a lot of animation and interaction, so forth. And then there's key states that you would want to include, which would be something like button styles, link styles, inactive, active, that type of thing, and icons. Websites like the Noun Project with over 1 million icons, you can get inspiration for that, or you can custom design your own icons. So like we've done in this example is with Ninja Gloves. They're an industrial glove company. They manufacture gloves for different industries, but mostly for industrial. And we went through a whole process where we did a brand guidebook, we did a mood board, and these are some of the things that we indicated in this particular process. So now we're going to go into the process. I think this is the fun part. So let's jump right into this segment where I will demonstrate to you my process in creating a simple mood board using Photoshop. And you may ask, why Photoshop? Well, because it's really cool. It's easy to use, like the clipping mask I use a lot. And it's just my tool of choice. It doesn't mean, as I said before, you have to stick to Photoshop. You could very well go into using Canva and some of these other simple thing. So what you would need to do first is that you need some photos to put in your mood board. So at this point, I would have already gone on various websites and taken a look at all the different photo collection and created a folder with all my photos. I would gather about 5 to 10 photos. In this case, it's simple, so I'll do about 4 or 5. And so let's jump into it. I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to do the fun part, which is how to create a mood board. And I'm going to show you step by step. Okay. So by now, everybody should be able to see my screen. Yes. Yes. Okay. So as I said, this is Photoshop. I have here that I've already done is a mood board template. And so you want to, as I said, you want to select between 5 to 10 photos. All right. And these photos will best describe the mood that we're going to be creating. And 1 second. Let me see that again. Sorry about that. Okay, can you see? Everybody can see? Okay, so let's start with the process. So we have here the template, and as I said before, and I've already gone through the task of collecting my photos. So we're just going to go right ahead. These are the different sections. These are icons indicating that photos are going to be here. And at the bottom here, we have the color palette that we're going to be creating. Okay, so hopefully you guys could see it bigger. Okay, so let's start. The first thing I want to get into is how I gathered everything. I use Shutterstock. And for example, I would put the keyword red and black. which I have here, and I would enter, and anything that came with the inspiration of red and black, and that's basically the brand color of the Ninja, as I mentioned to you, the Ninja project that we did for one of our clients, a very large client, and their theme is red and black. So I want to look at different inspirational images that basically connect with that, relate to the red and black theme. And I've done that already. I've also, you could use Google. What came to mind as well is when I thought of the industrial and strong, and it came to mind a Corvette, a red Corvette, that signature red with that steel, in the rims. I thought Corvette red would be a good, element to add into my mood board. So I selected this. And of course, different design inspirations. As I mentioned, there's a website called Design Inspirations. You can also get some great inspirations from here. And here we have icons that you search through for any inspirational icons, because in this particular project, we did use a lot of icons. So went through here to get some inspirational stuff. And then Dribble, as I mentioned, will give you the interaction as to what exactly. We're not going to put interaction into this particular mood board because that's more in depth, but you could definitely come here if you are, want to include some interaction. And then I will go through this with you at the end to talk about the color palette. So starting, I would have already created a folder on my desktop, as I mentioned, and here's my folder. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, I didn't use this one, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As I said, you could use between 5 and 10. And so I've pulled all these images in. So starting with the logo, because as I mentioned, not every client or person would have a logo already. In this case, our client did already have a logo, and so we drew the inspiration from the logo. And so here's the logo. We bring that in, and then we have the car, that red Corvette that gives that sort of power horse type of feel, high-tech, sort of inspiration. And then we have another photo that I just chose from Shutterstock that I thought just really connected with the color scheme that I was going after. Coal, I brought in coal because coal was the color that I felt, and also the association with the industry. It doesn't always have to associate with the product or industry, but coal, the color scheme, went great with this. And then I brought in the bolts. So I brought in the bolts, which are steel, and that color hue. And then, of course, I brought in the buttons, and we talked about the wireframe. So these are the wireframe buttons that I selected, and this is how I got my inspiration. Now we're gonna go into the color palette part. And so the color palette, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different color palettes, colors that we have to draw from here. Oops, I lost one of my wire roll. Oh, here it is. Oh, I forgot my wire roll. Great. Okay, so we have everything. This is where I got my wireframe, or buttons and wireframe concept from, inspiration. So here we have, right? I'm just gonna zoom out because I want you to see the whole thing as it changes. So I'm gonna take the color palette. So starting with the first one, you see this little eyedropper tool? I want to get a red. So I want to get their brand red. In the case that they already have a logo with the red, I'm going to select it from their logo. Okay. If they did not have a red, I would have selected it from one of these red colors that I thought was appropriate. So I'm selecting it from the logo. So that's my first color palette. And then the second one, let's go with something darker. So let's go with, we could do a darker hue, something like this. Not too black, but we can get a dark hue. And so I like to go from the darker to the lighter, right? And then we have here that we can get a lighter sort of gray, but not, this gray seems to be fine. Maybe something a little darker. Let me try to get something here. Yes, this would be great. Well, let me try to get something here. Okay, this would be great. And so we can get we're going down, as you can see, from darker to lighter. And then we have, let's get something lighter in the steel. So we can get this, which is a bit lighter. And then we can get even a lighter hue of gray, because as the color scheme is black and red. So let's go with something a little bit more gray, but no, this is too, so we keep, yeah, this is perfect. So here we have our inspirational or mood board with all our inspirational photos, and we have our color palette. Okay, let me show you something with the color palette. So I use a website called Colors .co that you can use as well, and you could also use this to generate a color palette. So for example, you would click generate, and the color palette can be created from this without having to do the whole exercise in Photoshop like I did. So here we have different color palettes. Well, I want to generate a color palette from a photo. So I'm going to go into the same folder that I created, and I'm going to pull a photo. All right. And now the photo comes in, because this is one of my inspirational photos. And when I click on this, I can actually move it and get my red. And if I click on this, I can get another color. I can get, you know, another color scheme here. And if I click on this, so I could actually, you could use different photos as well. I could draw from different color schemes using this amazing platform. It's really cool. And so this is an easy way. If you don't have Photoshop skills, you can actually draw on the color scheme by getting something, yeah, something like this. So you can also get a color palette using this. And here it is. Now, when we spoke about last time, the hex code, these numbers and letters represent hex code. And so these are the code colors that you're going to use throughout your entire brand experience, entire brand building. This is going to identify, so from publication to websites to everything in your company, you use these brand colors. Okay, so if you're hiring a graphic designer, if you're a marketer and you're hiring a graphic designer, or you're hiring a company like ourselves, WebWorks Labs, you're going to want to share this brand color, or we will create it for you if you don't have anything already established. So that's it in a nutshell for my webinar presentation, and where, you know, I'm showing you everything. Oops. Yeah, so this is it. Sorry about that. I just want to show you the end result before we finish, and I take all your questions and answers if there are any. So this is the end result of the actual website. So we went through the whole process of doing the brand exercise. And so this is the end result we did for our client. It's still a work in progress, but you can see all of the color hues and the tone has been set and brought into the overall layout and design. The red, that nice Corvette red, the gray, the charcoal, has all been brought into the actual layout and design for our client. The icons, as we talked about, you know, so everything has been brought in throughout the entire process for our client. So this is basically how you create a brand guide. So I'm going to end sharing now. And if you have any questions, this is the end of my webinar. I want to thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to share my expertise and how to build a brand. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. You can also send it later on. If, you know, those who did not have a chance to actually participate in this webinar today can always send me a question. And any questions at this point, I can take them. And this is a resource, as I mentioned, of all the different sites that I visited a lot, you know, within my presentation. So that ends my presentation, and I want to thank you for joining us today.
Questions in the chat?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I see some questions. How long does the process usually take if you do a full mood board? Wow. Well, you know what? That's a very interesting question because it could take days, it could take weeks. It all depends what you're searching for. But idealistically, it should not take more than a couple days, 2 days max, because you want to be searching. Some people want to do a deep search. They go at great lengths, beyond looking for inspiration. As I said, there in some cases they look for things that are textured. They could look through magazines, tons of magazines. They browse the web, and it's almost like a scavenger hunt in some cases. So something simple like a digital mood board, I would say would take me, well, it takes us about once we have the elements, that could take us roughly around 8 hours to put together. I think the second question is similar. How long does the process take? So yeah, again, it depends what type of mood board you're doing. It depends how extensive the project is, but I would say anywhere from 8 hours to 3 days should be a fair enough time for you to do your research and gather all your photos and so forth. Another question. What if you are starting from scratch when the brand has, okay, what if you're starting from scratch when the brand hasn't yet been formed with a logo? So this is actually going to inspire the logo creation process. So what we would do is that we would meet with the client. As I mentioned before in the webinar in the beginning, we pride ourselves on our great client relationship in terms of always being accessible, and we really go deep in the beginning to really understand the client's needs. Once that initial meeting is done, definitely, we will draw from the information that the client has with us, and then we will start to build a persona. And then from that persona exercise, we will then understand who the target market is. There's a whole process, and then we can actually start to create the logo with our suggestion based on the product that the client is selling. We can draw from that based on our meeting with the client. We will start to create a logo, and then from that logo, it sets off the whole process of the mood board in terms of what matches the logo look and feel. Is there any other question? Are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions. So as I said, feel free to email us any questions that you may have about this particular seminar today on how to create a mood board for your brand. And I thank you again for joining us and look forward to future webinars that we will have for you. Have a good day.